of all, congratulations on this wonderful state conference. I mean, I'm just amazed for the last 2 days. Fortunately, I decided to do what I don't normally do, which is come and go. And I said, I want to come earlier. I want to get to know the young people and the dynamic people and the not so young people who are doing things in NATAK, so that I get to know and we build lasting relationships. I think what NATAK is doing, I'm trying to understand it, I've not fully understood it yet, is something quite unique and quite incredible. Hats off to all of you, and hats off to the leadership and to all of you for doing it. Shailaja, the utter warmth and the generosity with which you not just invited me, but have continued to shower your love and affection and caring is very healing for me at this point. You know, one thing you experience after this kind of experience that I had, and jail was just one of it. The attack has been there since 2015, since 2010, when there have been many such efforts to incarcerate me, is that people ostracize you. Even organizations you've known, nice people, perfectly decent people, would prefer not to involve yourself with somebody like that. Because one thing about proto-fascism, and I say proto-fascism because I don't think we are completely there yet, but in positions of constitutional governance and power, we have individuals who just do not believe in the fundamentals of neither the freedom struggle or the Constitution, equality and non-discrimination. So one of their tactics is fear, intimidation, violence, and also fragmenting us. Fragmenting us, because you attack one section, that section gets isolated and identified. Then you attack another section, and that section gets identified and isolated and ostracized. Then you attack one more section, all apparently discrete attacks, but they actually stem from the same ideology that does not want India to remain a constitutional republic, where our preamble is our guiding star, where the sovereignty is with you and me, we the people. Electoral democracy cannot trump constitutional democracy. And I think what we are seeing is, and I say this with a matter of shame, that the Indian Parliament is being used to dismantle our constitution brick by brick. The laws that are being manipulated and passed without discussion, without debate, without the essential of a democracy, which is that even a sole voice counts. Even one voice of dissent or disagreement, we need to listen to. Because the day we don't, and we allow only the majority to rule, we become a mobocracy. And I think that is we are teetering there, we are getting there. Hopefully we won't completely topple over. But so much of that is left to us. I keep hearing whinings and cries about what the opposition is capable of or not capable of. We must continue to criticize that and push them. But I think a lot lies with the people. It's individual acts of resistance and bravery that will stop that man or woman who's trying to lynch an innocent. And that's theater. You just need to stop that hand. That requires courage. It requires conviction. It requires to just step out of our own protected mind. Nobody is protected. That's the other thing I want to say. That none of us are safe. If we think that by ostracizing X or Y or Z, we will remain safe, I think we are just buying time. We are just buying time. None of us are really safe. But let me talk a little bit in the language of theatre, something I've always loved, though I'm not a theatre person per se. I write, I write, I'm an activist, I write different kinds of stuff. But theatre has always been very special for me, right from school and college days. And I was thinking today, because one of the typically cliche things you do, and I just love the quotations that Kirti had in her speech, is you think of a quotation, because sometimes quotations sum up the drama in a few lines. So I was thinking of these wonderful lines of Chaplin, because I think Chaplin was the ultimate, critique, and with humor, and with such passion, and with such a light slate of hand, that he engages us still. When he said that life is a play that does not allow testing. Life is a play that does not allow testing. So sing, so cry, so dance and laugh, and live intensely. Before the curtain closes and the piece ends with no applause. And I think that is something we need to absorb, that whatever we do with a deep conviction from within. And I think the time here and now, and I say here and now even topographically or geographically speaking, Kerala is special. I know many of you feel that those of us from outside who like the air we breathe when we come here, who enjoy the vibrations when we come, not just to Trivandrum or Kerala or Kochi or Calicut, but even in this beautiful stadium, which from the moment we drove in and that beautiful aesthetic over there, there is something different and special here. It's possibly got to do with the demographic diversity. It's possibly got to do with a certain passionate commitment to political dialogue and diversity. I don't know. My dearest Keralite friends tell me, but there is patriarchy, but there is a lot of rigidity. I agree, but I still feel that if there's a place that should start this, it should be Kerala. And I think if Kerala is doing it, and if NATAK has, in very 7 difficult years, or 7 I think, 6, emerged out of such a difficult phase in our lives, in our country's lives, in our people's lives, in our nation's lives, then I think it's something we really need to understand, not just in terms of empathy, but in terms of why this becomes necessary everywhere. Friends, if I come here and I just sit like this, somebody will ask me, will you be able to get up or sit back? And then I will tell you that in the barrack 6, for 63 days, I was trying to think that was a black height or what height. There were windows. I was opposite to my that was on the floor. And over there, at that height, was this one window. There were windows through the barrack, but that was my window because I could see it morning, noon and night. And in that window I would see sunrise, sunset, a peacock, a monkey, and sometimes an eagle. And I think it's important therefore to also talk about nature, because when you're inside a barrack and in jail, it is seeing the peacock, seeing the monkey, sometimes seeing the black cat Arjun who used to walk in the night, and all of us women would run to see him. I don't know why he was called Arjun, but they had already called him Arjun. All these were signs of hope and freedom, that maybe one day we would all be outside. And there are a lot of my friends still inside. There were a lot of conversations. And I just keep telling myself, somebody said why I'm not bitter. When I was inside, I kept thinking of Sokalo Didi. Sokalo Gond is the Adhyaksha, the president of the All India Union of Forest Working People. of which I am the vice president. She's been to jail twice, in 2015 and 2018. She was there for a month in 2018. We ran a campaign to get her released. And she didn't eat food. She said, I will not eat jail food. I mean, I used to keep thinking when I was inside, I ate very little there. So I lost a little bit of weight. I need to lose more. But she would not eat. She just ate phal and milk. And we were worried. Our whole union was worried that how will she survive? But her spirit was indomitable. Then there was Rajkumari, also in jail. Roma, another Sati, also in jail. And even as we speak, we know the names of friends and activists in Delhi, in Tihar jail, whether it is Gulfishan, Umar, and so many others, Miran Haider. And we name those prisoners, though there are many others, there are 5 lakh under trials in India. But we are naming those who are political prisoners because they are there because of the stand they took, of the stand we take to just stick by what we believe and non-violently assert that belief. And even that seems to irk those who believe that words are dangerous, humor is dangerous, theatre is dangerous, art is dangerous, and therefore it becomes so important for all of us to understand that what you are trying to do together in NATAK is something that will give you strength. Because when you become a collective, the fear gets diffused. The collectivity of action makes it a little less easy to become a target. Little bit. So it's extremely important. I mean, whether we use the words of Baba Sahib Ambedkar, Shikshit, Sangatit, Sangharsh, it's obvious. People ask me, do you not feel fear? How can you not feel fear? Of course I feel fear. The question is, do you succumb to it or do you somehow think that collectivize it into action? And I was telling Kirtiji this morning, we spent a lovely few minutes together, that for me the biggest strength was, and I want to say something personal to Shailaja, that I'm looking forward to when she gets back to creating theatre again. Because that's how the conversation started. That when you get into organization building, sometimes you forget your own time for theatre. And that's happening to me, that because I'm so much absorbed in my organization building, I write less, and I don't like it. I want to write all the time. In jail, I wrote a lot, every day 3,000 words. I fought for my pen, I fought for my pad, and I used to handwrite a lot. So I think it's important that we do also what we are good at, apart from organization building, which very few people do. So don't stop the organization building, but also do some theatre. It's very important that we keep doing what we are good at. And one of the things I wrote way back in 2016, and I realized that today in 2022, I can say the same thing, but it's much, much worse, is that we have a government today which has declared a war on different sections of its own people. So, an elected government has declared a war on the people of this country. What do I mean by that? Look at what's happened to our labor laws. We don't even talk about it anymore. 150 to 170 years of hard-earned workers' struggles, 8-hour working day, the right to leisure, the right to good health in my workplace, the right to parity between men and women, the right to a sexual harassment committee in the workplace. All of these hard-earned rights have been whittled away by the labor codes And what does the government do? They don't want to talk to the unions. They don't want to talk to the unions because the moment you have a tripartite discussion, you'll have to reinstate the hard-earned rights, which are constitutional rights, by the way. They're constitutional rights of India's working people, including the Pravasi Kamgar, including the migrant worker, whom for the first time in this country's history 2 years ago, we felt ashamed when we saw mass migration from Bombay, Mumbai, from Delhi, of lakhs and thousands of people walking back in desperation to reach their villages. Where is that sense of shame gone? 63 crore people are migrant workers in our country. These are official figures. Every caste, every community, but maximum scheduled tribes, OBCs, minorities, Muslims. All intersectionalities. Which kind of identity will we push on them? They are migrant worker first. They are Jharkhandi or Bengali or Odia second. Okay, they are OBC or Muslim or Dalit third. And they are woman. The woman migrant worker is the worst off of all of these because she's bearing a child. She's being sexually abused by the contractor. And it doesn't matter to us. So that's one war. The other war is on our Adivasis and forest dwellers. In 2006, 6 years after the Constitution, thanks to the forest workers' struggle, we got the Forest Rights Act of 2006. I don't know how strong the movement in Kerala is, but in Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, Orissa, even parts of Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Adivasis and forest dwellers are using this emancipated law to claim community rights over decades-old land. And this is an important law because it's a recognition of rights law. It's a law that recognizes pre-British which are the tribes who lived on that land. And it's a law that gives life to Schedule 5 and 6 of the Constitution. So when I used to talk about the Constitution to my Didis, Sokalu and Rajkumari, they said, ठीक है बहन, आपका संविधान बहुत अच्छा है, मगर आपके सांसद ने, why did your parliament take 56 years to give teeth to the Constitution and pass this law? And that's the point. 75 minus 8 years, and I'm minusing 8 years for obvious reasons, before 2014, this country was somehow slowly being pushed by the democratic rights of the people to get decolonized, to get more democratic. And before that could even begin to happen in full, we now have a proto-fascist majoritarian force that believes in the construct of a Hindu state. So attacks on workers, attacks on Adivasis, the most brutal attacks on our religious minorities. Sickening and brutal, where you have lynch mobs watching. And we know the text. I don't have to tell this audience the famous text that glorifies the three enemies of the imagined nation: Muslims, Christians, and communists. So we are seeing this played out. We are seeing this played out in the public domain. And the individual dissenter, the writer, the journalist, the protester, the comic. How many comedians have been attacked and have been told not to perform? Munawar Farooqi was in jail for a month. So I think now we should, in every city and town, have edicts with names of people who've been jailed. Put them up. Orissa has a big list. Maharashtra has a list. Gujarat has a list. UP has a big list. Delhi has a huge list. Kerala also has a list under UAPA. So let's have a list, public list of those detained and those in prison. And let's dedicate some moments of our time to understand why they are in prison. And then let's do something which people did for me. And I'm so grateful for it, because depression, isolation is what you feel when you're inside. Time nahi katta, you feel depressed, you feel very, very lonely. But then from 27 July onwards, thanks to the union and thanks to Edwan, thanks to so many organizations and friends, I started getting letters. And I got postcards. And people wrote to me from every corner of the country, including Kerala. And when I would read those letters, I was not just connected to the outside world, but all of us have egos, and my relevance became revived. I felt loved and wanted. And at the end, when I came out, I had 2,700 letters, postcards. And I think, let's do this for every political prisoner, not just Teesta Setalvad. Let's find out where they are. Let's have campaigns to write to them. Even getting a few hundred letters, a few dozen letters, can give you a lot of sense of strength. Let's somehow break the barriers of the prison walls, and maintain the human connections for those who are within. Let's not forget them. Let's not let them get forgotten. Friends, my organization, Citizens for Justice and Peace, works on the question of communalism, forest rights, hate watch, and also citizenship in Assam. And I know Assam is very, very far away, but I want to spend a few minutes, because the way this union government is going, they're trying to impose the CAA and an All India NRC NPR. And the implications of that is going to be social tensions and upheavals like we cannot understand. In 2019, we know that the CAA was passed, amendments were passed, and we also know that the government keeps telling Parliament that the rules have not been passed, so don't worry, nothing is happening. That's not true, by the way. We've just done a story that by executive diktat, the Ministry for Home Affairs has in 9 states opened special windows for clearance for those minorities from 3 neighboring Islamic countries. So the facilitation has begun. And we also hear from the Home Ministry that sooner or later the NPR, NRC upgradation will be ordered. Don't forget that the matter is pending in the Supreme Court. The constitutional validity of CAA, NRC, NPR. For 2 years, the Supreme Court did not list them. Now they've been listed. But despite the fact that the Supreme Court has not adjudicated on the constitutionality, this government doesn't really care. They even appointed an election commissioner while the appointment of the election commissioner was being adjudicated. So we have a certain brazenness about those in power who are even kind of defying the Supreme Court of India. So why talk about anything else? So I'm inviting all of you as theatre people to become alive to the danger of what this CAA, NPR, NRC will be. Because it's going to affect every village and every city in India. What is it? What is this conundrum that Assam is caught up in? This documentary test of citizenship, the documentary test of citizenship is unheard of anywhere in the world. Our 1955 Act does not allow for it. But through the back door, through these rules that were first brought in by NDA 1 in 2003, and to which all of us civil rights activists were unaware and silent, you suddenly have the proviso for birth, registration, legacy, where you come from, which religion, which caste, all being put down on your NRC NPR form, and one district collectorate officer empowered to declare you a doubtful citizen. The moment you give the babocracy, the bureaucracy, this power, go to Assam and see how it is being misused. It is frightening. Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad, former President of India, his family out of the NRC. Muhammad Sanaullah, a Lieutenant General, fought in the Kargil War for the Indian Army, sent to a detention camp for 1 month. I asked the authorities that does our army not have scrutiny powers that they will put an infiltrator in such a high position? I mean, they have made a mockery of this. And while politically the Muslim is the target, Assam shows us that every caste and community is affected. The Namo-Shodras, the Santals, the Rajbanshis, the Gorkhas, Bengali Hindus, Ahomis, everybody is affected. So for any of us who feel कि मैं बच जाऊंगी because of my caste and privilege, that's not happening. The moment you allow an illegal, unconstitutional power to the bureaucracy, there is scope for corruption and misuse. And that's why I invite all of you to visit our website, cjp.org.in. You'll get the material to understand the dangers of this. We also have a program called Hate Watch. And I'm deliberately bringing this up because we were talking about it this morning also, Kirtiji and I. And no sensible person cannot speak about it in today's India. कि ये जो नफरत जो फैलाई गई है ना, ये जो नफरत की गोली, it's almost like an apheme, it's almost like an aphrodisiac of hatred that has been fed to sections of our people, is allowing sections of our majority to become complicit and silent when there are violent physical attacks against sections. It's doing damage to us because to be silent when there's an outrageous act of violence is not human. It's not natural. The normal thing is to stop it. But we are being immunized into a silence. And therefore, one of our most important programs of CJP is to monitor this hatred, is to try and report it to authorities, to television channels, NBDSA, etc., etc. But apart from that, is to arm the foot soldier in the village and the district, the activist, to be able to spot and dialogue this hate. Because we have this thing called the pyramid of hate. It's a pyramid of hate. And we believe it begins with prejudicial attitudes. Then it becomes prejudicial action. It's like a pyramid. Prejudicial action. Then it becomes actual acts of discrimination in society. Like we saw in Karnataka, when there was a call given to boycott some Muslim shops outside a temple. Then you have violence against a section. And finally, if we are silent about all these stages, we have a genocide. A mass act of targeted violence. And hence there's a huge responsibility on us to arrest the prejudice, to dialogue about the prejudice, to have discussions about the prejudice. Because I agree with Kirtiji when she talked about theater in the classroom, that you can't teach diversity. No. You have to be able to get young minds and adults to experience the joys of that diversity. And I was finding it very intriguing that one of our programs we've been running since 1994 is in schools. It's called Khoj. And we try to develop an alternate pedagogic approach where the child's world, the young mind's world, becomes the center of the classroom. And her or his feelings, her or his values, emotions, and opinions are constantly part of the discursive battle. So we encourage debate, even if there are contentious subjects. We ask young people to write migratory histories of their families. कि आप कहाँ से आए? कौन से गांव से आए? Which language do you speak? Do you speak the language of your village still? Do you go back to that village sometime? कोई connection है कि नहीं? And then once they trace that migratory history and they talk about it, either in Banaras, where we are doing this, or Mumbai or Pune, suddenly that classroom, which was monocultural because of the uniform and the class discipline, suddenly with this narration, अचानक वो diversity हो जाती है. वो कन्नड़ में कोई बोल रहा है तो कोई कश्मीरी में कोई बोल रहा है तो कोई गुजराती में कोई बोल रहा है तो कोई मराठी में कोई बोल रहा है. And how did they get this migratory history? They got it by talking to their family members, some old aunt or some old uncle or some grandmother. So families also like it because families also feel कि आज हमारे बच्चे बड़े disconnected हो गए हैं. So let's talk about it. We've come up with this amazing collection of these stories, which we're going to publish soon. We have this team in Assam, which is all younger, much younger than me, all younger than 40. All castes, all communities, half of them are women who are going village to village to village, giving paralegal and legal work on the question of citizenship. And we are handling 200 cases a year. Why am I telling you all this? First, to share. I wanted to share, of course. But I'm also telling you this because for me, in those 63 days, 70 actually if you count the police remand, when I was inside, the only message I kept sending everybody was, keep on working, don't stop. First 6-7 days, there was a shock after my arrest. But my greatest joy and strength was that CJP's work did not stop. And after the first week, it revived. They carried on through pain, through anger. I said, this is the only reply we can give, is that the work should not stop. Yes, the individual is important, but also the collective endeavor should not stop. And that's why I believe, friends, that we have to make spaces, develop our subtexts of resistance, not be stupidly adventurous, but not compromise either. And constantly think of stories and narratives. And you know, we have many stories in India. Kerala has millions of them, which are stories of eternal resistance to authoritarianism. And people will see the parody like this. I mean, I gave a separate lecture on the Constitution and you know, I feel like laughing when people try to tell me that अभी law commission में भी ऐसे judges को बिठा दिए हैं that do not believe in the Constitution. The ones who, from Kerala, who called love jihad a danger. That, how did our Constitution come into being? आवाज से आया क्या? हमने फ्रांस से import कर दिया क्या? French Revolution के बाद? क्या हमने अमेरिका या इंग्लैंड से import किया? I mean, what are you talking about? Do you have contempt for the Indian people? For centuries, this land has had people who have questioned caste and inequality. For centuries. They have been silenced, there's been violence against them, but they have never stopped questioning. आप बुद्ध को पकड़ लो, महावीर को पकड़ लो, बसवन्ना को पकड़ लो, नारायण गुरु को पकड़ लो, एकनाथ, नामदेव, तुकाराम, फुले, अंबेडकर को पकड़ लो, कबीर को पकड़ लो, नानक को पकड़ लो. I mean, ऐसे औरतें भी थी हमारे बीच में. There are women also. राष्ट्रीय सेवा दल has actually made a list of the women who countered caste and asserted their right to remain as single women and not marry. It is all these values of resistance that went into the making of the challenge against British rule, the challenge to colonial rule, and finally the Constitution. You know, 1857 was of course an important battle to remember. and it needs to be deconstructed and all of that. But I feel like laughing when people start with the history of resistance with 1857. Actually, it started in 1769. I mean, how many people know about Titumir, Birsa Munda? Abhi Birsa Munda ko aap jante hain kyunki BJP appropriate kar raha hai. But you had the Santhal rebellion, the Indigo rebellion. You had in Assam, in Maharashtra, in Karnataka, in Gujarat, you had Adivasi and forest dwellers taking on the British because they were looting the timber for their forests, from their forests. So our people have resisted. Different sections of our people have resisted. The elite came in later. The elite came in later. Yes, of course, lawyers and doctors and everybody came in, but they came in the 18th, 19th century. So our constitution has also been written with an understanding of these struggles. And why do you think somebody like Ambedkar or Phule had such an understanding of that structure of inequality? Because they were part of the society that had been trampled upon. So they could understand what it meant to give a vision of equality and non-discrimination, while recognizing that it's going to be a long while before we get there. Long while before we get there. So friends, I can go on and on, but I don't want to bore you and you have a session ahead. But I also want to end with just one more historical example. We need to look at our history also a bit more compassionately. Let's not look at a Phule versus an Ambedkar and Ambedkar versus a Gandhi. I keep telling, as a lover of history, that each played a very important role, and a different kind of role. And I think it's important to understand the different kinds of role played by different streams of the national movement. So when I read people who have no real claim to history, they might be chartered accountants, but they hold positions of power, who say that, we will rewrite the history of this country, come what may, nobody can stop us. My only answer to them is, the real history of this country is still in the writing and is still in the making. We've not yet got there. Eventually, history will decide whether the people of this country will write this history and the representatives of those communities who struggled against colonial rule will write that history, or whether that section which today views a political project in the refashioning of the Indian state as its goal, whether that section will rewrite history. Gandhi for me is a very interesting figure, not least because of his commitment to communal harmony, with all his faults when it comes to how he saw caste. And I know that. I've talked about it. So one of the books, which I was very pleased to see when I went to a bookshop yesterday in Trivandrum, DC Books, is my book was there, which is an edited volume. It's Beyond Tulika's Beyond Doubt. It's a dossier on Gandhi's assassination in Malayalam. And the reason I mention this book is because it's not my original work. I've just collated original work by one of my mentor journalists, Jagan Fadnis, a very renowned Maharashtrian journalist who wrote in 1998 that before the final criminal terrorist act of killing Gandhiji on 30th of January 1948, there were 5 attempts on him before that. For me, it was an eye-opener. Somebody who knew history well, or thought she knew history well. When I read Jaganda's book in 1998, it was an eye-opener, because this is not part of our discourse. And this anthology of mine brings out Jagan Fadnis's book in toto, his original Marathi in English. And Fadnis says that in the 5 attempts to kill Gandhi before 30th January 1948, in 3 of those 5, Godse was involved. So this narrative that it was not spontaneous, it was not a conspiracy, begs deconstruction and reason. So there are many, many things we need to do. We need to figure how we can communicate. We need to figure how we can stop this appropriation of history. We need to stop acts of violence and discrimination around us when we see it. And we need to also celebrate with joy and laughter as we do it. Because just like the wonderful words of Bertolt Brecht, incidentally on 16th May, I think, 16th May 2014 was the day the election results came. Those are the lines I pasted on Facebook. That will there be singing in the dark times? And I said, yes, there will be singing about the dark times. So here's to a lot of singing, music, theater with meaning, and lots of love and lots of courage to NATAK. Thank you.